I was sitting here thinking, and I thought back in about a story that came to me that I've never forgotten. Back in the late 80s, I was doing a fellowship at the Texas Heart Institute with Dr. Cooley's team, and every Wednesday at the Heart Institute was Pediatric Day. And on Pediatric Day, patients would come from all over the world, and they would bring their children and seeking cardiac surgery on their children for life-saving surgeries that they desperately needed and could get very few other places. So Wednesday was always a little challenging day because dealing with infants and neonates and doing heart operations on bodies this big presents all kinds of challenges. But something happened on one particular day that I'll never forget. And so our routine was we would often get to meet with the family the night before, because as an anesthesiologist, that was my role. But oftentimes families didn't arrive till late, and we had to see them the next morning. So as we were going through our beginning our morning, the routine was to go in the operating room, set up everything with the team, get everything ready, and then my job was to go out and talk to the parents and get the baby. Many of these babies had heart disease that was so severe that even crying would cause them to turn blue because they had deformities that did not allow their heart to get fully oxygenated, or their body to get fully oxygenated. So we developed a system by which we would just go out and give the baby an injection in the thigh right through their hospital gown. The first thing we did was we'd tell the mother this is about to happen. And then we would come back out there and make it. And so when we do that, we're going to quickly take the baby and we're going to go away, because the baby can't stand the stress of going through separation from you. If that happens, we could have a really serious issue. So most of them complied, and it was not a problem. Now, this particular day was the very first case of the day. We always started at 7 in the morning. And I walked out as I always did. I'd already introduced myself. I had my syringe in my hand, and I went to give the syringe in the baby's leg, give the injection. And right as I did, the mother grabbed my arm. And when she did, she said, "I just want to tell you one thing. He's all I've got." Because in the last 2-3 years, I've lost my husband and our other child in a motor vehicle accident. So whatever you do, bring him back to me. So with that laid on you, I proceeded with the injection, took the baby, walked away. But I got to tell you, I was never the same. And the reason I was never the same was because she taught me a lesson that I've never forgotten. And that lesson is this: if someone that never knew me met me 5 minutes before I was about to take the most precious thing in their life away, can you imagine how much trust that took? How many of us give that much trust to someone that we meet in 5 minutes? But that was the situation. And as I grew through my years in medicine and began changing more to leadership in healthcare and then leadership in higher ed, that lesson never left me, because I thought, my gosh, if that lady, that mother, could trust a stranger that much, why can't we have organizations that have trust? And then in that day-to-day world, those operating room worlds, the safety that comes through that environment comes from one thing and one thing only. It comes from a teamwork level and a system of collaboration and trust among the team. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about, for a few minutes, about trust and collaboration. Because that's how I think we change the UNT system, the campuses, UNT Dallas, UNT, the Health Science Center, the one in Frisco, to something that no one's ever seen before. This is not about like being like everybody else in higher ed. I don't like checking peer reviews around other higher ed institutions. I like to know what we can do as a team, because we have a lot of great people. So I want to start with that, and I want to just take a few minutes and just give you some thoughts to ponder on maybe. We have a board of regents who determines much of our direction. I will tell you they are 100% behind where we're going. They're 100% ready, as we are all ready, for less silos, less I'm at Dallas or I'm at UNT or I'm at Fort Worth, and more how can we come together? Because at the end of the day, when we just went through the recent McChrystal survey, we found that the number one thing that stands out in our whole system are the high quality of our people. And second to that, are how much they're mission driven around the mission of the student and the student having success. So I don't know how many of you have been in other organizations where it was miserable, but I can tell you I have. I've also been in ones that were not miserable, that were great, that I didn't want to leave. And they all had one thing in common: people that were dedicated to the mission. People that were dedicated to serving others. And serving others in the healthcare world, that's patients and families. In higher ed, it's got to be students and families. And likewise, we have to serve each other. We have to treat each other like we respect and care about each other, so that we can all better take care of the students. So the regents are highly supportive of this. We just had two new regents join us. The student regent, Andy McDowell from UNT, that kind of rotates around every year. And UNT Dallas had one last year that just rotated off. And then we had a new regent from Houston, Lindy Reedman. We also talked a lot about the McChrystal report. The McChrystal is a consulting group that has done a lot of work. Many of you participated in the recent survey. And that survey came out and showed us lots of information. But the main thing it showed us was that we have great people, they're mission driven. And when it talked about what do we really need to work on, the biggest number one thing was communication. Our system did not have systems of communication. And when you don't have communication, you don't have trust. If you can't understand what's going on, it's hard to collaborate. It's hard to have trust. So we're working hard on communication. And one of the things I want to hear from many of you at some point is do you like to be communicated to? And how do you want to communicate back? Because communication is communication. It's not a monologue. I'm not here to just talk one way. It's a both directions here. So I wanted to talk about that for a second. So communication was number one. Number two was strategy. The UNT system has never had a strategy. We've had plans that were a bunch of PowerPoints that were mostly gathered up from all the campuses, but there's never been a collective strategy of us working together to form a strategy. And so how I envision that working is not the way it usually works in organizations, which is the top decides what it's going to be and it's pushed down to everybody else. In this environment, it needs to start at the campuses and come up this way. So that our job is to make sure we're helping the campuses achieve their goals. So that work will begin a little later in the fall, and many of you will be asked to participate in that, and you'll be asked to participate as the plan gets developed, and then all of us have a role in making sure we get the things done on the plan to get to our goals. So that was one thing I wanted to talk about for a second. I think you hear me talk about it a lot. I'm a huge believer in working and living in and creating values-based organizations. Every single one of us, if you think for just a minute, who spent time investing in you in your growing up? It was most likely who had the big influences on you, who gave you your values. Each of us have a set of values, even though we've never stopped to identify them, maybe. But those values were given to us by either a coach, a teacher, a parent, a grandparent, a minister, whoever. But when you're real clear on what your values are, then it's really understandable why you'd want to be in an organization to work at every day that has values that align with yours. But we've never fully identified the values of the system. So we're going to do some work with that. And if you think about what does a values-based organization do for you, I wrote down some thoughts here. It gives you a true sense of one team. It gives you a sense of how to engage, support, and unify with each other. Because think about it for a second. We're all living with the same values. My guess is because most of you here are strongly committed to the students and their families in these communities. But therefore, the values here are pretty aligned, whether they've been identified fully or not, or you've identified yours. So when we have that, we can engage with each other easily. We can get a sense of unity. It's a whole lot easier to attract and retain talent when people know they're coming into a high values place. It allows for a lot easier achievement of excellence in our education, our research, and our philanthropy. Above all, though, with a common purpose, a common mission, and a common set of values, it gives us a sense of unity. And that's extremely important. I don't know how many of you ever worked at a place where there was unity, but you don't ever want to leave it. And what you start to see are there are pipelines of people that when they hear the word, they want to find a way to work there if they can. Now, I've seen this in my past life. I've seen it. I've worked in those places. I've been a part of that. You never want to go back to something that's not that way, I promise you. So if we're talking about a values-based culture, we're always moving forward. And so we recently talked about a vision for the future. Visions need to have a timeline, so there's a sense of urgency. Our vision is set to 2026. By 2026, the UNT system, and when I say system, I'm not talking about 1901 Main Street, downtown Dallas. I'm talking about all of us as a group of people. By 2026, the UNT system would be one team working together, values-based, customer-oriented, customer-focused, seeking to find excellence, curiosity, and innovation in everything we do. So what does that look like for you all? It means you look at your own job every day. I guarantee you, how many of you every day, and you don't have to raise your hands, but how many of you every day going through your work day, I promise you, maybe not every day, but at least once or twice a week, go, oh my gosh, this could be so much better if somebody would just listen to me, show them how to do this. Okay? Anybody ever done that before? You can raise your hands. Okay. So I'm telling you right now, I'm empowering this whole group to look at your areas as you identify ways. I guarantee you Arthur would appreciate it. He doesn't want you just hiring more people. He wants you to look at ways to where you can cut out the waste of the day. And look, we're up here just trying to get it together. We depend on all of you to tell us how it ought to really work. Because you're the ones that sit there and do it and know the ways it could get improved. So it's going to be very dependent that each of you participate in this process to let us know how things can be done better. That's what I mean by innovation. I don't mean invention. I mean innovation. I mean looking at what is currently going on, how can it work better? So have curiosity about things. Have curiosity about how can we recruit students better? How can I be a part of raising funds to support this university? What can I do in my daily job to make this be the better place? Overall, the way I see our goals for higher ed, and right now we're in a time of the world where higher ed is being looked at and questioned. as to what its value really is. We see corporations all the time starting their own degree programs. We see more and more challenges with the for-profit environments at a time when we're seeing the personal side of things, which is a harder world to live in, with inflation, with the other stresses of daily life, and the other economic challenges we're seeing. So this is a time more than ever to come together and stand for what we all believe in, where we show up, where we work every day. That there is high value here, that we can deliver value to the students. So for me, it's affordability. Therefore, we have not raised tuition across the system on average for the last 7 years. I can tell you at the Health Science Center, we have not raised tuition in the 10 years I've been there. We find other ways to keep the cost burden off the backs of the students. I hate student debt. I think what's happened in this country with some of the corporate approaches to these students has put them in really serious binds. But it's our job too to see what we can do to lessen the burden by how we manage the way we do our work. So we announced to the board there'll be no tuition raises across the UNT system this coming year. That makes it harder for guys like Arthur, my friend Greg Anderson. However, we will do what we got to do to take care of the university. Whatever that means. If that means we have to do something different next time, we will. I can tell you what we did at the Health Science Center. We looked for ways to create new streams of revenue. Not off the backs of students with just tuition. That's way too easy. And then lastly, I wanted to share, I get asked all the time, well, what does really a values-based culture mean? What does that look like? So this is exactly what I shared with the board. That way it'll save you having to go through watching the live stream, which is extremely boring. Values-based cultures do these things. There's high trust. Remember the mother I just talked about? There's high trust. In order to have trust, you have to give it in order to receive it. And then it's sustained and grown through repetitive experiences with each other. But you got to give it first. You don't wait until you're just going to watch and see. So there's high trust. We preach at the Health Science Center that we have the 4 C's of hiring. If I could just get the HR people to work with me on this, it would work really well. That's for you, Wanda and Donna. 4 C's of hiring, and they go like this, and they're in this order. We hire first and foremost for character. We hire next to see, is that individual a culture fit for us here? Do they believe in what we're doing? Third is, can they fit in the chemistry of the team they're going to be on? Is that team going to accept them? And fourth, guess what? And last is competency in the job you're hiring for. Because we can train competency, but I can't train character. So when we start changing how we hire and how we look at people and look at resumes in one eye, but at the same time have a conversation about what are your values. Tell me how you've led with your values. Tell me how you respond to other people. And one of the best things you can do for executives is to go out to dinner with them, watch them how they treat the wait staff. Because there's been many executives that look really great on paper. I took them to dinner and we were done after about the first 10 minutes. So, high trust, hiring for character. There is no more we versus them. There is no more UNT versus UNT Dallas or HSC or any of that. We're going to look at how the resources that we have and how we can help each other. And that's why, as Betty was talking about, we are hungry at the HSC to find ways to start collaborative programs with you all. We've talked at Denton about starting collaborative programs. If we're going to start with our medical school or our other professional health care schools, if we wanted to start an MBA, why would we do that? We could go to Denton and get it right now, and then when you have one, we'll get one from you. We don't need to do that. We got so many resources inside this system that if we will work together, the synergy is scary. The unleashed power of the team would be unbelievable. But we've never experienced that in UNT system. So when there's no we them, there's no silos. There are areas of specialty, areas of special interest and special teaching. We have all that. The departments don't go away. I'm not talking about all that. What I'm really talking about is there are some structural silos that have to stay in place, but we create porous walls between us. So we interact with each other, we collaborate. There's open sharing of information, why I'm so adamant about developing a whole new communication platform that we're working on, and that will work with your teams as well. So we have open access to information. It's a people-first culture. When on the McChrystal survey, it kills me when I hear that our people feel like they're not truly cared for in the system. That is something we have to change. And people that's not something you give a bunch of words to. You have to have words and then action about how we show people we care for them. And it's not always paying the highest money. And it's not always giving the most time away. A lot of times it's just stopping with somebody and saying, what's going on with you? How are you doing? What can I do to help you? We celebrate each other. You guys have so much great stuff going on here. It was unbelievable. And a lot of that stuff on the early part of it doesn't take care of the financials. But if it's sustained over time, it will take care of the financials. I promise you. So we need to celebrate each other. And lastly, I think from the way we treat each other and the way we treat our customers, being, in my opinion, students and their families. You know, I used to be told, well, higher ed doesn't think they have any customers. I said, man, I'll tell you what, when I was paying my daughter's tuition, I can tell you I was a customer. And I made sure they knew I was a customer. So we have customers. We have each other as internal customers. We have students and families as external customers. We have vendor partners that are customers. So we need to treat our customers, I think, with what I call the platinum rule. Have you ever heard of the platinum rule? You people? So the golden rule we were all taught in elementary school says, or Sunday school says, with the golden rule, I'm going to treat everybody else like what? Like I want to be treated. The platinum rule says, I'm going to treat everybody else like they want to be treated. Because guess what? In this day and age, not all of us want to be treated like Mike Williams wants to be treated. So, and guess what you got to do if you're going to execute the platinum rule? You got to understand the people a little bit. But what are they going to need? So you get to know the families, you get to know the students. And lastly, and this is a pet peeve of mine, I've spent the last 11 years of my life in the UNT system as a Board of Regent member and then as a president. We play way too small here. We don't play big. We play on the Little League field. I'm sorry, I'm a baseball guy. We play on the Little League field. We don't play on the big league field. We come hat in hand. Please, sir, I feel like I'm in a Christmas Carol when I'm in the legislature sometimes. Please, sir, can I have some crumbs? We're not going to play that way anymore. We're done with that. It's no more crumbs. We want to be at the buffet table. So, as a result of that, this year we're changing governmental relations. The team you heard about earlier, and this is just a start. For the first time in the whole time I've been here, we hired an entire federal lobby group that's going to take us to the federal level. There's so much money at the federal level that you guys, none of us have tapped into for years. There's opportunities everywhere in all kinds of research, non-research. So that's just an example. But we're not going to play small. So we're going to play big. And sometimes when you play big, you get knocked down, but then you get right back up. That's another thing in this system. We have not had a history here of being okay to fail forward, and learn from it. So I'm going to wrap up with this. conversation I had with one of the what I call landscapers, the groundskeepers, you know, whatever they call themselves these days. I can't keep up with all the terminology, but he was trimming the hedges at the Health Science Center one of my very first days. And I went up to him and talked to him and got to know him a little bit. And about 3 months later, we brought the landscaping crew in, gave them an award for that year being the top educators on campus. Because what we taught them is, whether you're a police officer on campus, whether you're a custodial person, whether you're a person in line like Rose over here serving food to us this morning, you're an educator. Because you're in the business of preparing an environment where it's safe to have education. So as soon as we can get across to each other on our campus that every single one of us are educators, every single one of us carry the responsibility and the burden of that student and their family, we will get to a whole new level. So here's the last thing I'll leave you with. We're going to be coming back around for listening tours in September and October. And those are listening tours, not mic talking tours. So I'm going to want to hear from you. This is communication. So that's coming. In the meantime, you can get a hold of me at chancellor@untsystem.edu. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear about how you want to be communicated with. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I'm going to go back to the story I started with. So that's this. Think about for a second what happens in an operating room. You've seen it on TV if you've never been in it. Patient comes in the room, there's only one patient. Everybody's around that patient. When I used to do a lot of ICU work, same thing. We'd make rounds in the ICU, we'd round as a group. I'd have a nurse, I'd have a physical therapist, I'd have a respiratory therapist, a pharmacist with me because they're smarter than I am in that space about certain things, and they can tell me the best way to care for that patient. But the bottom line is, we were all around what? The patient. So I want us to start thinking about the student and their family in the middle of all that. And let's surround them with everything we bring to the table as to how we change their success, their experiences to a much higher level than they came in here expecting. Thank you very much today. I really appreciate you all.